Hello and welcome to the first episode of Quick Tips. This is a show designed around just quick techniques and things you can use for any style of miniature. And today we're looking at battle damage and weathering. So I'm starting off with some barricades from Warhammer's Kill Team. And I've just primed these in grey, and I'm picking out a colour scheme here of tan. So I'm finding three colours that are fairly similar but go up in brightness and saturation. So starting off with Zandri dust, Morghast bone, and deck tan. I'm doing all-round coverage in the Zandri dust, and I'm just applying this on pretty thick, just making sure that it's just completely covered. Next I'm using the Morghast bone, and I'm going about 3/4 of the way down the barricade here. And lastly I'm using the deck tan very loosely, applying this as a highlight, and I'm going about halfway down. Next I'm using AK's Enamel Wash, and this is a dark brown, and I'm using mineral spirits as a thinner. So I'm applying the Enamel Wash, and this is going to be pretty thick and it's going to spread a lot, but I'm just going as quickly as possible here on the barricades, fairly loose. I'm not worried about accuracy. And now I'm using the mineral spirits just along the top here, and I'm pulling away some of that wash towards the top. I'm trying to maintain that gradient that I had from the paint job underneath. And then lastly, I'm using a damp brush here just to pull away some of that wash that's a little too thick on the bottom. You can see it's pooling, so I'm just pulling away some of that. And make sure to wash your brushes in the thinner, because they won't wash in regular water. And I'm going to be adding some variation to these barricades, so I'm using Mephiston red, and I'm just applying some paint stripes on some of these other barricades that haven't had the wash yet. I'm sketching out loosely where I want this paint stripe to be. And again, I'm not worried about accuracy here, it's just about the overall look of the piece. So I'm sketching in some red, and I'm just being quite loose. I'm leaving gaps of the tan showing through to show that some of the red paint has chipped off. And I'm using some of that original deck tan just to break up some of those more straight lines. And with that, I'm just applying the wash as I did before. Once that wash is dry, I'm going back in with the deck tan, and I'm just edge highlighting some of the upper areas of the barricade. And now for some of the details, I'm using some Leadbelcher and some old copper from Scale Color. And I'm just hitting some of these nuts and bolts on the front, and some of the mechanisms on the back as well I'm doing in the Leadbelcher. Again, I'm not too worried about accuracy and coverage. This is actually pretty loose. I'm just throwing in some of these metallics just to kind of catch a glint of that metallic appearance. And I recently picked up some dark streaking grime from AK, and again this is another enamel, and I'm just applying it straight from the pot on here. I'm using some just gentle downward strokes just to kind of give the impression of streaking oil or rain. And I'm applying this to the metallic areas on the back just to take the shine off of those. Next I'm using a neutral grey and a coal black, and I've got an old sponge here and I'm just sponging on some of that grey. And with weathering you can really stop at any time, but I just wanted to push this just a little bit further. For an additional layer I'm using some of that black and just going in and dotting in some more definition to the grey sponge marks. And for some of the bullet hole damage, I'm just taking some of that black and just gently dry brushing some scorch marks around the area. Just dragging the brush over the sculpt just to catch some of that black on there. Just quickly filling in the bullet hole with some black here. And taking the deck tan again and just outlining around the edge. Again, just gives it a little bit more visual interest than just a black mark on the barricade. And lastly, I'm using some corrosion texture, and I've never really used this before. I picked this up recently, so I thought why not give this a go. And it looks to be kind of a sandy texture, so I went a little too light and then I just started to layer it on a little bit thicker. It does dry darker, which is nice, and it looks pretty good, pretty effective. Just to switch up the look of some of the barricades, I'm using some decals here and cutting them out. It's about 30 seconds of water and then a dab of water on the miniature, and then just gently brushing that decal off and transferring it onto the surface of the miniature. As long as there's water on the miniature, you can move it around. It's when the water starts to dry, that's when it will stay in place. And there you have it, some barricades for your gaming tables, some quick and easy weathering. You can apply these techniques to tank, exteriors, or terrain pieces, whatever you'd like. And if you've enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.